about Ukraine. From the very first days this war broke out, the Nazi, the Nazi slinging started immediately. It started immediately with pro-Ukraine, which was already formed up and ready to go for this event. But either way, this huge support group on Twitter, uh, non-Ukrainians supporting Ukraine, was hot and heavy from the get-go. Carrying on, calling Russians Nazis. Well, the problem is the people that overthrew the government back in 2014, the muscle, the 1% of people that took part in the protest, it was 1% of those people that overthrew the government. They walked into parliament, or wherever the fuck you call it in Ukraine. They had guns. Leadership left. The president fled. I'm pretty sure they probably would have killed him, knowing what I know now. But either way, they didn't make direct contact, so he wasn't killed. He was able to escape. Anyway, guns were used. Leadership left. New government forms after. The U.S. government sanctioned Ukraine's own aid package. It was giving Ukraine aid for several years up until the war started. From 2014 until when the war started, the U.S. government was sending aid packages. Weapons, it must have been weapons because it was explicitly stated in the aid package that the Nazi groups don't touch the aid package, the weapons. I'm gonna have to dig it up if somebody wants to quote me on it, or call or ask for some sources. More or less, aid packages of weapons and money and whatever the fuck the U.S. does was sent to Ukraine, and Congress made a special note to make sure the nationalist and Nazi militias didn't touch that stuff. I mean, looking back, they definitely were the only ones touching that stuff. But anyway, they made a special recognition that there was a problem with Nazis and nationalists in Ukraine. And that they can't touch this stuff. So they know about it. The West knows about Ukrainian nationalists. Ukrainian nationalism is probably the most numerous in members relative to all of any European, white, probably Asian too. I don't know. I don't ever heard of any Asian nationalists, so we'll just keep them out of this formula. But Ukraine, out of all countries that you could call white or vaguely white, Ukraine has the most nationalists. But most people in this country would call them Nazis. In Ukraine, there's both. Some will say they're nationalists. Some will just say, Hail Hitler. That's just how it is in Ukraine. And it's not... And that's the thing, though. You could walk around Sieg Heiling in Ukraine and somebody might Sieg Heil back, or you're just ignored. That's how it is in Ukraine. You do that shit in any European country, any Western European country, that shit ain't gonna fly. I'm building up to a point here, so bear with me. I would say 10% of Ukraine is this very nationalistic population. And then you have the whole gamut, the spectrum in between. The West sees Ukraine as a way to hurt Russia. Ukraine has a nationalist population that the West despises more than anything. What the people that lead Western nations hate the most is people that will fight to the death for their country and to protect their country the way it is. More or less their demographics. Leadership of the West despises nations that want to protect the population they have in the size it is or the demographics. That is the biggest pet peeve of Western governments. And here they are giving them $200 billion a year. No, they know about the nationals thing. They gave the nationalist guns to go on a suicide mission, weakening the greatest enemy of Israel. I'm going to say that again. They gave guns to the Nazis to use on a suicide mission to break Russia, their biggest military threat. It's two birds, one stone. I doubt any Ukrainians that matter will hear this, but you're literally being sent to the slaughter in the hopes that it weakens Russia. And it weakens Russia enough that the people revolt and change leadership. A combination of this war and sanctions was supposed to break Russia to the point that people were out in the streets chasing Putin out of the country. The opposite happened. So we have the war carries on. Russia is stronger than ever because now they're more self-sustaining. And they didn't account for this. They didn't plan this far ahead for this scenario. So what they're doing is just textbook definition of what a sunk cost fallacy brings. They don't exactly double down. They went from $110 billion aid package to a $61 billion aid package. You know, that's not really doubling down, but they're still throwing bad money after bad money. Good money after bad money. So what happens next? Unless the CIA with Ukrainians, they're working on this together. The CIA and Ukrainians have a project going on. They probably have several projects going on inside of Russia, finding ways to make Russia destabilize. They're looking for the jugular. They've never looked harder in their life. I'm talking out of my butthole right now, but I know I'm right. That's exactly what they're doing right now. They're inside Russia. They have people in there, on the payroll, trying to find ways to fuck Russia. Maybe it's a couple dozen, maybe it's a couple hundred. And they can't do it. They're having a really hard time doing it. Because the FSB keeps catching them. They got that terrorist attack off. But that's few and far between. For the amount of effort and the amount of money I know they're pumping into fucking Russia from the inside, they're not getting much success. So they're going to drain Ukraine of all of its men in the meantime. Until the day that they find a way to get Russia in the jugular, Ukraine is just going to be bleeding lives. And they've even approved sending women to the front, so they're not off limits either. They're in this too. It's definitely not going to get to that. Russia is a lot smarter than our leadership. They will find a way to get them to stop fighting back. Because that's the only way Russia can have a sense of security, is if Ukraine stops fighting back. Or Ukraine surrenders. Because until the day Ukraine surrenders, they're going to be sending drones. There could be 2 guys left alive in Ukraine. And if they got a pile of drones, they can program FPV cam out into Russia. They're going to do it. That's what it appears, at least. Anyway, that's my take. My point of this whole video was to say this: the Russia-Ukraine war is a West attempt at killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Wipe out all the nationalists in Ukraine and break Russia. And the reward would be, I guess, milking the resources out of both countries. Because there's not going to be anybody left.